Let's take a look at some information charts on Monero for BraveNewCoin. So Monero is a privacy anonymity focused blockchain, one of the older altcoins in existence. There are a few coins that have attempted privacy and anonymity that have not executed that promise nearly as well, namely Zcash, Dash, a few others. Grin is probably the most comparable to Monero. The other draw with Monero is the inflation is sub 2%. We'll take a look at that relative to everything else. And you don't hear much about Monero because they can't really crack it, or they haven't cracked it so far. I always check the blog, make sure nothing crazy is going on here with Monero. They enabled atomic swaps, or atomic swaps went live at the very least. Now, I wouldn't trust this if I was focusing on my own anonymity, but it's there should you so choose to use it. They also have a general fund for development, things like that, and it's pretty well funded, so they're not going anywhere anytime soon from that regard. If you look at hash rate and difficulty, it continues to increase post random X consensus algorithm change. So they previously had Crypto Night. They were adjusting it slightly every so often to stave off ASICs. That didn't quite work, as well as just making some new algorithm and making that algorithm CPU focused over ASIC focused. So that has clearly paid off for them as hash rate continues to increase. Some of this is cloud mining related. Some of this is botnet ransomware related, really because Monero's that good at anonymity and confidentiality and privacy. Criminals love it, right? That gets all the headlines, but even normal people use it to avoid the surveillance state. One downside to Monero is it's not really listed in a lot of places because it's so good at what it does. Regulators hate it. It kind of evades KYC AML, and that scares off the exchanges. It's listed on Kraken in the US and kind of sparingly in Asia. So if Monero ever gets more listings, that'd certainly be very bullish for price. I don't really see that happening, but one way to do that would be to make wrapped Monero, or make a wrapped Monero product. It would completely break the privacy aspect of it, but it would allow people to trade it more readily than they can now. If you look at the inflation, it's down at the bottom there at 1.28%, one of the lowest, or if not the lowest, proof of work inflation that people actually use. BTC right next to it there at 1.8%. And then you have Dash, Zcash, Grin, 5x, 10x plus inflation. So it's hard to convince people to buy and hold something other than Monero that does its job worse than Monero does, right? So it wins from that perspective 100%. There's just no fundamental reason to hold the other stuff if Monero works better than everything else. Transaction counts have continued to increase along with hash rate. Again, some of this is cloud mining, some of this is botnet ransomware, crypto mining, crypto jacker, all sorts of stuff related, right? And anytime you see massive peaks and troughs like this, it's probably not organic, probably not individuals turning their miners on and off or whatever. It's probably something goofy going on in the background. In the fill here, you can see that fees went down dramatically after they implemented the bulletproof changes in October 2018. Fees are currently around 5 cents, even with transactions rising substantially. So that scaling initiative has paid off, definitely. Block sizes are still rising slightly, slowly, which is fine. If this pace continues or if it hastens, they may need to adopt additional scaling initiatives if transaction costs increase dramatically. Scaling kind of like works great until it doesn't, and then all of a sudden you have all this activity, fees are insane, and people are asking you, why are fees so high? Why aren't you scaling, right? And then something eventually gets done about it, usually, unless it's ETH, and then that just, lasts forever and ever and ever. And people care more about fundamentals than actually making it usable for people. But where block sizes sit now is probably fine for Monero. Over the next few years, they'll probably need additional scaling measures. Looking at Monero Google Trends worldwide, they've waxed and waned along with everything else in crypto. If crypto picks up in Q4, price-wise, I expect this to go bananas as well. If Monero gets a listing somewhere, which I doubt will happen, this will increase pretty dramatically. But ideally, if you're bullish Q4, you want to see Google Trends pick up. You want to see people talking about Monero or crypto in general, because new money, retail interest, all that is generally bullish for price. Looking at the 365 MA in the green here and the multiplier in red. So this hit the multiplier several times in 2016 and 2017. Not really the best example for this, but it is an oscillator for overbought, oversold. Currently, it's approaching the buy zone, and the 5x multiple is approaching 1300. This will keep increasing if price increases. So I don't hate a buy here. The expectation of 1300 is probably a bit much until it breaks the midline. Again, it's unlikely to just shoot straight to 13. It did not break the midline in early 2021, despite being up significantly from where it was. That wasn't a 5x multiple from the 365 MA. So if you're bullish this, it is decently hitting the buy here. And the expectation minimum is that it hits 650 on the next move up. This could be a multi-year cup and handle, even though those don't always necessarily play out as expected. Here's the cup and then here's the handle. If this does reach 4 all-time highs a third time, there's definitely an expectation that it does go higher though, which would mean a test of this 5x multiple level that'll eventually be at 1300 by the time it gets there. So I don't hate ultra euphoric targets here if Q4 is bullish for crypto. Based on the 5200 cross here, things are neutral. It's crisscrossed a bunch of times, highly volatile. It's in between a bunch of yearly pivots. The volume cushion is down here between 90 and 135. Not a lot of volume on the way up as far as resistance is concerned. RSI doesn't really help you much here at all, as this thing is just ranging heavily. So this EMA cross probably crisscrosses again before a run, because it'll probably cross bearish and then bullish as we reach into Q4. It's also below the cloud, which isn't bullish, and you want this above 270 into October or mid-October to be convinced that this thing is going to have a run in Q4. So ideally, you could be buying slowly anywhere near the 365 MA. If it goes lower, you keep buying a little bit, and then if it breaks 270, you are fully in at that point. That's one example of a way to trade this into October. Against BTC, it's never really done super well, at least since 2018. It's really just been bearish. The MAs have stayed bearish. It's stayed below volume resistance. There's currently a super wide yearly pivot range here between 003 and 008. It's probably unrealistic to assume this thing could just shoot through resistance to 02. It probably needs a convincing multi-year trend to the upside to break through 01, 02. It just hasn't done that in years, right? So you can't just assume it's going to do it now. There's a bit of a bull div here, lower lows in price on flat RSI, but I don't know if that's enough to move the needle necessarily on trend. Probably just continues to range. And against ETH, it looks bad enough to buy because it's continuously making lower lows, approaching all-time lows, approaching this yearly pivot down here, way below the 200-day moving average. A mean reversion on a new lower low, all-time low test would be 0.12 against ETH, and there's definitely that bull div here as well. So I don't hate it against ETH into Q4, depending on how the rotations work. If the majors like BTC and ETH move first, then you'll see this spike down against Monero, and then very likely altcoins move in late Q4, and you'll see this mean revert back to 0.12 or higher. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETHBTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for TechMe Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC, or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocations, all of the vaults I'm in here on UrinComp and Aave, as well as the trades in the trades tab down below. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.